Welcome to this week's episode of Talk of the Town. My name is Phillips Jones. I'm the CEO of Vein Specialists of the South, and I'm guest hosting today. But I'm joined as always by Dr. Kenneth Harper, the founder and medical director of Vein Specialists of the South. And we're here today in lovely downtown Macon at the Mercer Townsend School of Music, Robert McDuffie Center for Strings. And we're joined by Mr. Robert McDuffie, the founder of the center, as well as Amy Moretti, the executive director.
We're so glad to interview y'all today. I've been excited about this for a long time since we got you on the schedule. We're about presenting the positive things for Macon. And really this is not only for Macon, but across the country and globally. And we'd like for you to share a little bit about why the Robert McDuffie Center for Strings, a little bit about your vision, your mission, and that's going to lead into great questions and a good visit.
Fantastic. Well, we're so happy to have you here, and thank you so much for your interest in what we do.
So tell us, who wants to share about why the Strings is here and how it started and what your vision is?
I'll pass it over to our director. You can get us started.
I first heard about the idea, this fledgling idea of the McDuffie Center for Strings when Bobby and I played together in Portland, Oregon. And I had run into him in the musical circles prior to that, but it was at a performance that we did together there that he, at a lunch, he started telling me about Mercer University and kind of some of our similar upbringings. I grew up in the South, up in North Carolina, and him here in Macon, Georgia, although I did not know where Macon was. And through the course of this conversation, I heard about, his ideas for wanting to have a wonderful conservatory here at Mercer University and where Mercer University was. He's just telling me a little bit about this. And it wasn't until about a year and a half later that I got the call from him saying, "Hey, we want you to come visit and come see what's going on at Mercer and see if this is something that you'd be interested in taking part in." And so my husband Steve and I came and visited here and just fell in love with the idea of starting something from scratch in a town that has so much potential, and just feeling like maybe we could make a small difference in other people's lives and in our lives. And so it was kind of like one of these things: jump in the car, load up the
Load up the truck,
load up the truck, and come to Macon. And it was January 1st, 2007, that I began work here with Bobby and the other faculty that he had assembled. And we started with this idea of we're going to have high-level string training, but always with a business liberal arts education. Take advantage of all the things that Mercer has to offer. And I think when we started with 2 students, I came here knowing we were going to be great. It's like, okay, we're going to be great. We're going to build this. And now, 15 years later, with all that we've been through to get it to this point, I could not be more proud. Part of our mission was to get these business classes into a curriculum that was going to service the students the way that we had initially envisioned.
Exactly.
But just always at the highest level possible. That's always been kind of the drive for it. You want it to be quality music making. And so anyway, I don't know if I answered that question.
No, you did. That was a beautiful explanation.
It's his fault.
I know. So, yes, that's all true. Amy and Steve loaded up the truck, moved to Macon, and the rest is history.
That was a 2-for-1 win for Macon.
It was. I mean, the fact that we have 2 great. I call them the Jay-Z and Beyonce of Macon.
Right.
So about 20 years ago, maybe 17 or 18 years ago, the former president of Mercer, Kirby Godsey, came up to New York where I've been living, and basically said, "I want you to join the Mercer faculty. You don't have to move, but I'm here all the time because my family's here and I have such dear friends here." But he said, "I need for you to put Mercer and Macon on the national map in music. So as you know, Kirby was a visionary, still is, and that was it. That was my charge. Put Mercer on the map. So I came down here 2 years before I made the call to Amy, just to kind of get a sense of the pacing of returning to Macon, commuting from New York. Not that much to do during those 2 years. I wouldn't call it a boondoggle, but it was fun. I mean, I was playing golf a lot and sitting on the porch at 1842 having a libation. It was, it was good. But then, I don't know exactly when it hit me, but I saw the, I felt the rhythm of the university and the town, and I knew what I could do, and that was to go to my colleagues and build a string center here, and one that would bring talented students from around the world because of the teachers. You know, we have 13 artists, distinguished artists as faculty here, but I knew I needed a great director, and not just someone who was an administrator, but a great musician as well that I looked up to and that the students would look up to. And Amy was the only one I considered. I met her when she was 23 years old. She was right out of conservatory herself. She was, I think, one of her first jobs was as concertmaster of the Florida Orchestra in Tampa, and that was my life in those days. I would just orchestra hop as soloist, and I stopped in Tampa, and I'd played with a lot of orchestras and with a lot of concertmasters, and I'd not run across anybody like you. She had the kind of the large musical personality that could carry an orchestra when you had a bad conductor, and that's the sign of a great concertmaster. There was only one other concertmaster that affected me that way, and his name was Bill Prusel, and he was a longtime concertmaster of the Cleveland Orchestra, and it's the only other time I felt that kind of strength from that chair, and she was only 23.
Wow.
And then fast forward a couple of years later, when we met in Portland and played music together, I was just telling her I didn't have the fixed vision yet for the school, but she was. It wasn't just a courtesy nod and a smile and yes, good luck, Godspeed, but she was truly interested in the idea of education, and so yeah. I mean, I didn't think of anyone else to come down and get this thing started with me, and so that's really how it started, and it's easier to see the end game than it is to reach the end game. We had a lot of false starts. It was not easy, but we're at a place now where, thanks not only to Amy and our teachers and our university, but when Kirby retired, his successor, Bill Underwood, took us on with a great passion as well, and supported us. I mean, I like to joke that Bill Underwood is the Julius Caesar of Macon. It's either thumbs up or thumbs down, and he has given us a strong thumbs up the whole way. And I know that you'll probably ask me this later on, but before I forget it, there are too many music schools in the world today. So why in the world did we need to do it? So we had to be meaningful, and we had to, I think, play an important role in these young people's lives as the music world is shifting and moving into more of a self-governing mode. We wanted to create and support musicians as citizen artists, where they not only know how to play their instruments, but where they can control their own musical and economic destinies. So that's why we have this hybrid curriculum of music, liberal arts, and business. And that's what sets us apart from the other schools.
Trailblazers in that area.
I think we like to think so.
When we think about Mercer and the impact it's had on our community, I think we don't realize how much it means. And the leadership just goes back to what great leadership can bring to a community, to an organization like Phillips for us, or to y'all's endeavors here in music. That's an amazing story.
I am 36 years old and a mother of 2 boys who play sports year-round. I am also a school librarian and enjoy a very active lifestyle. I play tennis, coach high school tennis, and strength train 3 to 5 times a week. My vein problems began in my mid-20s and became more painful over time. I never realized it was a medical issue or that something could be done to alleviate my symptoms. When I learned Vein Specialists of the South opened up a 3rd location near me, and vein care is the only thing they do, I knew I would get the very best treatment. It was covered by my insurance without a referral. The VSS staff were awesome. They made sure I was comfortable at my office visits and during my treatments. You won't believe the compassion you'll receive at VSS. I didn't realize how much my legs were hurting before. But after my treatment, my legs feel lighter and I'm able to stay active for much longer periods of time. If you want 5-star vein care, I encourage you to call Vein Specialists of the South today.
And I'm very interested in the business side. So talk a little bit about the citizen artist and why it's necessary to incorporate business when you're developing as a professional musician.
Well, the majority of conservatory graduates end up either in a symphony orchestra or in some way working in a part-time in a symphony orchestra. We have seen it. We've seen the symphony orchestra side. I personally feel, I think Amy agrees, that the business model of 21st century classical music, large institutions, doesn't work. And I feel that it's the lack of musician involvement in the institutions. I kind of smile when I say this to our recruits, but I'll say, I want you to get into the New York Philharmonic, but I also want you to be president of the New York Philharmonic. So you can determine the direction of that organization. And it's happening already with smaller music collectives. And it's just morphing into an independent contracting world. And we think because we're lean and mean with only 27 students that we can get ahead of it. And it's not a panacea, but we feel that our students with this kind of full, specific full curriculum will prepare them for what's out there, because it's going to be tough to navigate.
Yeah. So when you go on the road, it's well known then that this center is where you go for that type of thing.
The business school, the business part of it, and Amy, feel free to jump in. We're just kind of completing that. It took many years. We had to get approval from the accreditors, the certifiers. We had to get the board of trustees of the university to vote on it. We had to just jump through a lot of hoops to get there. So we've been preaching it for years. I've been teaching an entrepreneurship class on my own every other year, but now that we have an official, certified, approved by those guys, now we can really brag about that part of it. So the music world knows of us as a high level, small, intimate conservatory, and I think the business area is just now kicking in.
But we've always been on the cutting edge. I think that even the term entrepreneurship and this kind of entrepreneurial idea for musicians, we were on the cutting edge of that. I remember when I first started here, other schools were not focusing on that at all. Right. And that was a big talking point. And then it was, okay, how are we going to get the curriculum in place? And it's not easy within an academic structure. There's so many hoops that you got to jump through and make sure that you dot your I's, cross your T's. And so they end up taking 6 courses by the time that they graduate here. And we've been, even to this very day, still nailing down exactly what those 6, and who knows, it may evolve. And that's kind of the beautiful thing of this degree. It has given us that freedom. But economics, accounting, marketing, management, entrepreneurship, and professional selling. And then they get to do the entrepreneurship class with Bobby. And then all of our faculty, we've always had this kind of, we call it real world, but it's like we're all living in the real world now. But we've addressed them in a way that you don't just go to your practice room and practice all day. There is more that you need to know. when you
It's
graduate.
you have to know how to ask for money.
Right.
I mean,
Musicians need to be supported. We need to be supported.
Hey, you make a pitch.
We have
or
to-
go ahead if you-
well, actually, I'm glad you brought me here. My class is every other year for our upperclassmen and ADs, our graduate students, where their final exam is to go to a Macon business person and ask them for up to $500 for a project that's meaningful to them. And we work through the entire semester to build to this moment. And so, can I get on your calendar? I'll ask one of our cellists to come and speak to you about getting their
Phillips
instrument
knows
repaired.
I'm pretty good for that, right?
Oh yeah, that's fish in a barrel for that one.
Excellent. No, I mean it's and we do have some great guest speakers. We have in my opinion, the greatest self-governing orchestra in the world is in Vienna. It's the Vienna Philharmonic. It's a musician-led orchestra. The president is in the violin section. The development people work in the orchestra. And it's also the world's happiest orchestra because they control everything. I went to school with the president of the Vienna Philharmonic, and he speaks to our entrepreneurship class.
Pretty amazing.
Every, and they get a sense, once they know that they, I mean, it's true for all of us. When we know we're in control, we're happy.
So, I think a lot of folks may not realize the opportunities there are for music here through Mercer and through what y'all do. A lot of them are free. Talk a little bit about the different avenues that are out there for people who want to get their kids exposed or whatever to music or love classical music. Share those things that y'all are involved with in the community.
So this very Jennings Salon that we're seated in, we have concerts once a month here that are free and open to the public. We make them early enough on a school night that we do end up getting young kids coming to them. So it's 7 o'clock on Mondays, and you can see it on our website.
So who plays there?
It's all students performing. So, and especially for a young person to come and see someone that's not that much older than them. And here's the piano, and then the student is basically standing here, and then the audience, we can fit. Pre-COVID, it was up to 60, but now we, a little bit more spacing, and we can seat in here. So we've got those concerts going on. They're always master classes. I would say every 2 weeks, we've got some sort of open master class that takes place in this room that's free and open to the public. And then we have, we just had our season opener for the Macon Mercer Symphony Orchestra, and that is free for students. So with your student ID from your school, or if you're of a certain age, obviously you're a student. So there are those opportunities, and we had an amazing turnout last night at our concert, and then we also have a concert series called the Fabian Concert Series that takes place over in Fickling Hall on the main campus. There is a little bit of a ticket charge, but in the scheme of ticket charges for other cities, I would say it's on the low side. We want it to be available.
I think one of the big feathers in the hat for the community is the Mercer Macon Symphony Orchestra, which we hadn't had an orchestra for probably about a decade.
Right.
Tell us about how you were able to be a big part in that. Did Mr. President Underwood come and say, "We want you to do that"?
No, actually, this came from within. We actually brought the idea to Underwood,
Right.
and it was a sad day when the old Macon Symphony folded, but it was also an opportunity, and we kind of knew that we were going to get to a place of quality when our strings, where we would have to flesh out our orchestra with winds and brass and percussion, and but there was equal level to our conservatory students. We went back and forth with how are we going to flesh this orchestra out? But we want it to be we don't want a bad clarinet player and a good flute player and a mediocre oboe player and a really good horn player and a bad trumpet player and So what are we going to do? We just went back and forth on this, and we realized that hey, the Atlanta Symphony is right up the road. They're one of the greatest orchestras on the planet, but they don't play 52 weeks a year. They play 44 weeks a year. We only put on 4 concerts a year. They're dark on Mondays. M is a really good letter. Mercer, Macon, Moretti, McDuffie.
Yeah.
Music.
Let's have it on Monday.
Why don't we go to the principal players of the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra and see if they want to come down and work with our students as mentors, and in the meantime, create this uber orchestra where overnight it became the best regional orchestra in the country, and it's right here in Macon.
Right.
And at the same time, it's arguably the best university school of music orchestra in the country. And so, I mean, you saw the look on our kids' face. The first notes we're in our second year now, but the first rehearsal that we had with these amazing musicians, our kids were, oh my gosh, just like eating, as a kid, seeing a kid eat an ice cream for the first time. You know how beautiful that is. They want more. And that's what we have. So the professionals from Atlanta come down the night before and have a big rehearsal, and then have a dress rehearsal the day of the concert. But leading up to that, we have our strings learn their part twice a week, building up to it. So it's an educational initiative, but at the same time, the community gets to enjoy it.
Series includes 4 concerts during the year, and if you want to find out more about how you can participate by season tickets or individual, then check out this website right here.
Yeah, and the Grand Opera House. And
Right.
what's sweet about it is that it's a diverse audience. It's not just for a certain section of the community, and it's a young audience. We saw so many families there last night, and families of color. And it's important to connect to the entire community, to the entire culture. And that's what we think we're doing with this symphony as well. It's not, we're playing great music, but it's not all dead white European male composers.
Now, who was the guest conductor last night? Was Maconite?
Right, Roderick Cox grew up in Macon, was supported by the Boys and Girls Club of Macon, and got extra support from the Otis Redding family. I think Mrs. Redding bought Roderick his first French horn, and we're just very proud of him. I mean, he's really in the middle of a major career, an international career, and we really wanted him to have a powerful homecoming. And it was a magical evening.
The involvement of the McDuffie family goes deep in our community. The Redding family is kind of, and those, the thing I like about that is you give back to the community. There are a lot of people who don't want to do that or don't think that's important, and this is a good example of it right here today.
All right, so Bobby, we're in this beautiful mansion in downtown Macon on College Street. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of the house and how you guys ended up here?
Absolutely. As you know, living here, historic preservation is kind of a religion in Macon. And it's not lost on me. I remember this house, when I was growing up in Macon, was a pretty famous restaurant. Mm-hmm. It was Beals.
Beals, right.
And it was where you took your prom date. And hope that you had enough money in your pocket. But when we started the center, the house was luckily owned by Mercer, but it was a commercial space. We had lawyers here and accountants. I think there was an herbal massage therapist upstairs. You can cut that if you want. But anyway,
counseling.
Marital counseling.
Marital counseling.
Oh yes, that's right. There was marital counseling.
You can do everything
as well.
Here. Wow.
Anyway, I was dreaming about this every time I drove by it. It looked to be made for music, and there are examples in America of conservatories repurposing big mansions for their own school. There's the Curtis Institute in Philadelphia. There's the old San Francisco Conservatory, Peabody, others, and a lot of community art schools around the country have taken beautiful homes. So yes, so I just started announcing that this was my dream house, and I would tell it to anyone who would listen, including President Underwood. And he heard me. He'd get a message from Bobby McDuffie, and okay, maybe I'll get back to him soon. And then he knew what I wanted to talk about. And I think when the upper administration realized that we were here to stay, and that we had gotten traction, that's when they started thinking seriously about moving this house over to music. I think it was part of the School of Engineering endowment or something. I think the rent from the commercial spaces went to the engineering endowment. And luckily, the man who gave the house to the engineering school in Mercer is also a big music lover, a man named Gus Bell. And I saw him at a trustee dinner once, and I don't know, I may have had a glass of wine, but I ran straight to him and said, "This house that you've got, I'm in love with it, and can we just put some language and state that it would be great for music one day?" And maybe he had a glass of wine, and we agreed, and he put it in writing. Yeah. And that kind of opened the door. But we had to have the support of the president and the university. But thanks to the Woodruff Foundation in Atlanta, who this fantastic group of people fund capital projects around the state of Georgia, and they fell for it. They loved the idea.
Wow!
And we got young Gene Dunwoody to help us with the design. He's passionate about this town and the buildings in this community. With Amy, we worked on totally gutting the second floor and turning it into a real conservatory with 13 practice rooms and 5 studios and a student lounge. And the downstairs is pretty much as it was, with the exception of Amy's studio, and we turned this large room into a performing salon.
Wow. Well, it's an amazing space, and I have to think that when people come from around the world to the McDuffie Center, they have to think, wow, this is what I imagined it would look like. This is an Old South mansion in Macon, Georgia, and what a wonderful place to study.
It is a magical place.
Yes.
And there's some days when you walk through and all you hear is music. And it's just from every corner of the place. Just so proud to have it and grateful that we have this.
Yeah.
So I think we oftentimes will ask a question that young people might be interested in, or parents. And since we have 2 professional artists with us today and visionary entrepreneur, what would you recommend to families who have a child who is interested in music, maybe have extraordinary talent or natural ability, and what do you say? Because you see people drive their children in the direction they want to go for their child, but how did your parents do that, and what do you recommend?
Well, I feel fortunate myself that the violin came to me at an early age. My great aunt played violin, and so when my family was traveling to visit her, she played for us, and my parents asked, did I want to play? And that's when I said yes. I was 4. I don't really remember it. So I started playing violin. My parents, I think once they saw the ability, then they tried to open as many doors as possible. I feel fortunate that I also had parents that played music for me going to bed. That was chamber music or orchestral things. So they made sure that I was hearing things like that and taking me to concerts. I would say, and see now I'm raising my own kids, trying to figure out, I know what it took for me to get to where I am and the amount of hours and the dedication that it takes to be at a high level, and this would go for any field. And now that I've got, my kids are now just that preteen, early teenage years, and I want to make sure that I'm giving them the right thing. But I would say come see a concert. Right. Make sure that they have access to that, because you never know if something's going to strike their fancy and they're going to want to try it out. And once the person, if you see there's talent in that person, then you've got to get them private lessons. Whether they're playing in their school orchestra or their school band, school choir, hopefully they're getting access in the schools somehow. But then if they're showing talent, they need to have one-on-one instruction. My feeling on pressing is like, yeah, it's not that much fun to practice, right? It's, and when you're a kid, it's not something that every kid's going to want to go run and practice on their own. So encouraging. Bribery, I think my dad used to take me out for frozen yogurt cones when when that was really popular. Remember?
Yeah.
If I practiced a lot, but I think just encouraging, and really even amongst the students that come here, I am witness to different upbringings and what these young people have gone through to get to where they are now. So I'm more about the encouragement and just trying to show things to your kids as much as possible, making things available.
Agreed. But eventually, if a parent sees talent in their kid, they have a responsibility to at least try to get something started, right? I think it would be bad parenting if you see that you have a talented kid. But eventually, the kid's going to have to come around. And that's what happened to me. My mother saw that I was talented, but I wanted to have a normal life in Macon. And so I'd been playing for 8 years. I was 14. I was really good. I was playing in every church in Macon, the synagogue, Rotary Club, but I hated to practice. And I was on the basketball team at FPD. I wasn't very good, but I had practiced really hard in basketball and got promoted to the starting five, and we were playing Stratford Academy, and I was going to start. But it was the night that Itzhak Perlman, the great violinist, was coming to Macon. And my parents made me go to the concert. And I was furious. So I sat alone on the front row at Porter Auditorium at Wesleyan and made my parents sit in the back. I was so mad. But that was what did it for me. My life changed that night. I didn't care about basketball after that concert. I knew how hard it was to play the violin. I'd been playing for 8 years. But I hated to practice. But I saw this person on stage exude joy. And he did things that I couldn't believe could be done on this instrument. So I went home and practiced until, 3 in the morning. I was just so excited. And so eventually, it has the young person has to realize, okay, I really want this to happen. And that happened to me because my parents took me to a performance. And it was the old Macon Concert Association.
That's pretty cool. You think people achieve a certain level, whether it's what I do or what you do or on the business side, and that you just kind of rest on it, but you don't, do you? Tell us a little bit about how much you practice.
Oh my goodness.
Well, not this week.
Not this week for you, but you've been working hard. The violin for me is like I'm a constant student of the violin. So I'm constantly practicing. Fortunately, I have wonderful concerts to look forward to and goals with repertoire, but every day I'm playing. And even when I go on vacation with my family, it's a rare trip that I don't have the violin with me. It's always with me. So just keeping the hands in shape. But no, it takes, when I was a student, I was practicing a lot. And by a lot, it's more than what we even demand of our students here. Yeah. But there will be days that I will play the violin for 6 to 8 hours of that day between chamber and if there was an orchestra. There are times that you play that much, and then there are days now. I'm happy if I get an hour in, of peaceful without the phone ringing or the email ding. That I got to deal with this. I'm really happy if I get a good hour.
You really do have to. This is the first period where I haven't played the violin in maybe a year, and I'm going to feel it when I come back. It's going to take a little while to get back in shape, but I'm going on the road pretty soon, so I'm going to have to get back in shape. Yes, you have to stay consistent, and
Now, here's the question everybody really wants to answer to. Tell us about the violin.
My fiddle.
Tell us
Okay.
about your fiddle.
I know,
Right.
yes.
Do you want the Reader's Digest version, or do you want?
What's Pelson making Georgia want to know about
Okay.
the violin?
Well, I'm fortunate enough to play a violin made by Joseph Guarnerius, who is, along with Stradivarius, was the greatest violin maker in the world. This violin was made in 1735, but I couldn't afford it. Back in the mid 90s, it was $3.5 million, and but I had to have that violin. I had to have
Just like
it.
the house here.
Just like the house, I was, the violin was harder than the house. There were so many false starts, but I knew I had to have it, and I think the way we secured this violin could only happen in America. At the end of the day, we formed a limited partnership where 35 shares at $100,000 each were used to purchase this violin. So at the end of the day, there's 16 of us who own it, and I'm the only violinist. And Amy's heard it. Have you played it? Mm-hmm. It has a rich,
Powerful.
rich and powerful sound, but it has great sweetness up at the top. And so the next question, the obvious question is, well, can we tell the difference? Can we tell the difference between it's now a ridiculous amount of money, a multi-million-dollar violin and one that was just made? And I would push back and actually say that I don't think that is probably the right question to ask. It's really not up. You don't need to have that burden. It's really the fact that you're seeing a confident artist on stage. So the head of SunTrust Bank, when I went and asked SunTrust to buy the violin, which was not successful, by the way, he said, "Why do you have to play a $3 million violin? Why can't you play a $1 million violin?" And I said, well, believe it or not, playing a $1 million violin is like running with a pulled hamstring. I can't do everything I want to do. I can't run at full speed. Anyway, that is such a good analogy. And then he said no. But it's really the confidence and the comfort that you see with the artist. But I just think it has it just has the great qualities of the Stradivarius, which is the high, sweet sound, and the power of Del Gesù. Guarnerius was also known as Del Gesù. He was a very religious man. He signed every one of his violins with a cross. And each of these violins has the original label with the cross on that label. Bosnian maple and Northern Italian spruce. And there was a mini ice age in the 18th century that somehow has caused these violins to get better with age. And people say, well, what about the modern violins? Are they as good? Well, we won't know for 100 years because some of the newer violins don't sound so great after 20 or 30 years.
Amazing.
Yeah,
This has been a great visit.
it really has.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are awesome
Thank
to
you.
come and set up in our house.
Yeah.
So thanks for inviting us.
Thank you.
Hope that y'all enjoy learning more about Bobby and Amy and the McDuffie Center for Strings. We're glad you've been with us.
Yeah, thanks as always for turning out for Talk of the Town. And join us next week. You never know where we'll end up.
I'm a respiratory therapist, 33-year-old mother of two, with one of my children having medical needs. I enjoy being outside with my family, and I enjoy riding horses as one of my personal pastimes. After having two children, my varicose veins were really painful, and I knew I needed help in order to keep up with my busy lifestyle. That's when I reached out to the only accredited vein center in Central Georgia, Vein Specialists of the South. Meeting with the VSS team, they listened to my concerns and developed a treatment plan perfect for me and my hectic schedule. During my procedure, I could tell the staff truly cared about me and what they do. The procedure was really quick. They put on my favorite music and made me feel completely comfortable the entire time. Recovery was easy, and I was glad I didn't wait. And most of all, it was covered by my insurance. Now, there's nothing stopping this mommy from living her best life. If you need vein care, I encourage you to call Vein Specialists of the South today.